What's up there, YouTube? Section 333 here. I am smoking the Savinelli Marron Gloss. This was one of my first pipe videos ever. I love the stem on this thing. It's absolutely gorgeous. I don't know if you can see that. And the grain is beautiful too. Beautiful pipe. And I'm smoking the GL Pease Maltese Falcon. I'm looking in the tins right here in front of me. And I've been smoking this a lot on my videos because I got such a large tin of it. I actually have two of these, so of that size. So I think I'll be all right for a while. God knows. It's funny, I haven't bought any or purchased any new tobacco in quite some time because I have a lot of tobacco, and even for the lockdowns, I feel like I'm very well stocked at this point. Where's my tank? Sorry about that. I apologize. So even for the lockdowns, I feel like I'm well stocked, and should be all right for probably many years to come. I think I'll only purchase now if I can get a stash of like Penzance or something like that, you know. And I have a pretty good stash of Saint Germain tobaccos. So I wanted to talk to everybody today about, it's funny, I actually made a video about the coronavirus. I don't even know if I ever posted it. I don't think I did. I work in healthcare. I am a registered nurse. I am not on the front lines. I work in administration now. I'm an administrator. I used to be on the front lines. I was on the front lines for SARS, Ebola, when these things happened. When we had the outbreak of the initial swine flu and avian flu outbreaks, which infected a large number of people were infected by those, millions, worldwide, and even in our own country. And the mortality rate, however, was lower. Not the number of deaths, but the mortality rate was actually much lower. Now I'm in this position here where, and it's funny too, like in administration, I think I work harder now than I did when I was on the front lines, because my job is to make sure that the people on the front lines are in this safe environment, and that we also have enough patient capacity to care for these patients. So we had my division of the hospital coordinates all the movement throughout the hospital, where we're putting patients to make room for the coronavirus patients, things like that. Basically, we tore the hospital apart as far as where we were putting patients, and then we had to put it all back together. So as we transition back to normal operating procedures, we have to take apart all the work we did to get to the point where we could hold 900 coronavirus patients. And the hospital I'm at actually took the most patients and has had the most discharges and most successful discharges and extubations. We did very well. That being said, now we have locusts and cicadas. We have murder hornets, and and now race riots. And, you know, a lot of the young people today don't remember the race riots in the 60s. They don't remember, you know, the Watts riots. They don't remember that. They don't remember the OJ riots from the 90s. They don't even remember the riots in Ferguson from a few years back, because people have very selective and short memories today. You know, I can't speak as to whether I'm for or against our current president. Although I don't think I would ever be against a president as a patriot myself. That is the president of the nation. I may not agree with that president, but I don't know if I would ever be against a president. I would vote against a president that I did not feel was doing things good for this country. I am also a person who feels that if you are not happy with your elected officials, elect new officials. Those are your term limits, believe it or not. Your term limits are the ballot box. You know, if you go there, you know, if you have someone that's doing a good job and continues to do a good job, you continue to elect them. If you have someone that does a poor job, then you vote them out. You know, you get a new candidate in there and you vote them out. Well, a new candidate could even be you. But one of those things is that you have to think about is, you know, there's this group out there today. We'll just use their initials, BLM. And they are a group. It's not just a hashtag any longer. And, you know, I'm a registered nurse. So, to me, all lives matter. And that's what I've been taught my whole life. Growing up, that's been taught to me my whole life. My father was the product of an interracial marriage. His marriage was, or his parents' marriage was actually at one time illegal in some states. And that's why I don't think people realize how far we've come in race relations in this nation, and that African American people are black people. You know, I'm going to call them black people because we're saying Black Lives Matter again. You know, oops, I said it. I'm not funded or anything like that. They just may not post the video. But if we're saying that Black Lives Matter, you know, you have to remember black people in this country are freer here than we are anywhere else in this world. Anywhere. And that's just a fact. People are ignoring the facts. People are saying it's just the president's fault. Half the people that when you see Black Lives Matter, whether it's they're talking about Eric Garner or Michael Brown or Trayvon Martin, those were all people who were killed on a different president's watch. No offense. And did we vilify that president for those deaths? And mind you, none of those people got justice in the way that these people feel that they should get justice. I also feel, though, that there's a certain level of responsibility in human beings, too. There is no excuse for bad behavior. You know, CNN said that riots were the language of the unheard. That's absurd. That's ridiculous. That's not the language of the unheard. That's the language of riots. That's what a child does when a child gets frustrated and doesn't get their way. That's the most pedantic language there is. It's civil discourse is the language of the unheard. The court is supposed to be the voice of the unheard. That's how our justice system is set up. You know, all of these people that sit back and, oh, we're going to bail out rioters and things like that's not the answer. Rioting in your community and bailing out the rioters. You know, hey, you want to do something for that community? Help to fix those businesses that were destroyed in the African American community. You're wrecking your own businesses. You're wrecking your own chance at climbing up out of poverty. That's it right there. It's right in front of you. And there's your equality. You know, it's one of the reasons I don't worry about racism, because I have never looked for anyone to accept me as a man of color. I have always expected people to accept me based on my performance in my career and my choices as an individual and my way that I carry myself in the face of adversity. That's how you judge people. You know, they have missed the Martin Luther King boat in its entirety, because they're asking people to, well, treat me different based on the color of my skin, whether it's positive or negative. You know, you're literally destroying everything that Martin Luther King stood for. You're destroying everything that Malcolm X stood for. Malcolm X was not a militant version of Martin Luther King. He wasn't. He was the furthest thing from that. Yeah. You know, people ask me, I have friends of all kinds of races, creed, denominations, religious denomination. You know, we have just never thought about the fact that we were different. We've always looked at what we were that was the same. And this is a time where I think Americans do need to look at what makes us all the same. We're all the same. Every one of us comes from some kind of oppressed form or group of people. You know, all of us come from this. And you know, whether you were Italians that were oppressed, Africans that were oppressed, Syrians that were oppressed, Jews that were oppressed, the Irish were oppressed in Europe. I'm telling you, African American oppression, slavery here in this country, it was everywhere. We're all coming from oppressed peoples in this country. We have the opportunity for the greatest. We have so much in common, yet we look at what's so different, and we have this opportunity for the greatest social experiment in the history of the world. There's no nation like America in the world. The world. And yet we squander it with little petty differences. We trivialize rather everything that's really truly important, and then we glorify the minutia. You know, like, oh my God, you know, like, yeah, it's a shame what happened to that man. That's a horrible thing that happened to that man. But it would be horrible if it happened to any American in this country. You know, they violated that man's Fifth Amendment rights. That's the bigger thing here. You know, and that's where we need to stand up to the state and make our statement to the state. That wasn't a assault on the black community. That was a singular assault on a single black man. And more importantly, it was a single assault on a single American who has rights. You know, and if they stomp on his rights, they're going to stomp on our rights. That's just how it goes. You know, our rights are always next. You know? And then everybody's like, my kids are like, oh, you gotta vote, you gotta vote these people out. And I'm like, well, yeah, but who are you gonna vote out? You know, you're saying you gotta vote out, but then you're saying it's this Republican president's fault, or is this guy in the White House's fault. Well, like I said, you know, a lot of these people died on the watch of Democrats. I mean, that's a Democrat state in Minnesota. Minneapolis is a Democrat mayor, is a Democrat district of Ilhan Omar, who is a black Democrat congresswoman. They got a black police chief in Minneapolis. I mean, it's a progressive Democrat state. So, yeah, okay, fine, vote them out. But you got to look at them. and say, all right, this Democrat community has, and what have they done for that community? No, they're just taking your taxes and filling their coffers and things like that. And that's when you have to get out and vote. So maybe voting Democrat for them has not worked out well. Maybe they need to vote the other way now. That's all I can say. That's all I can think. A logician would say that. A person who would look at it logically and say, oh, maybe this is where we need to make the change. But what happens is people aren't looking at it like that. People are looking at it along tribal party lines. And I think that's something that we need to stop doing, is being tribalist. We need to expand our thoughts. We need to say, hey, maybe we need to vote the other way. Because like I said, you want the change. The change starts at the ballot box. But what are you changing? I don't know anybody who looks at what happened to that man, George Floyd, as being a good thing. I don't know anybody who would agree with what happened to that man. And I'm not saying he was a good guy. I'm not saying he should be martyred or anything like that. I don't think he should be. He was a criminal and he was committing a criminal act at the time, but he definitely probably did. He definitely did not deserve to die based on it. The whole aspect of being apprehended by the police is that you are apprehended by the police, arrested, put in jail, and due process. That should have happened. It should happen for him. It should happen for every private citizen in this country. It should happen to every. I will go as far as to say it should even happen for every person in this country, because every person that's in this country and occupying this country, or a domicile, or even homeless in this country, deserves due process. They're all protected by the Constitution of the United States, which is the greatest, bar none, the greatest political document in the history of man. I just do wish that they would look to heal. And I do call on our leaders to ask for healing. I do call on our leaders to get the world back in order, get this country back in order. I would ask that they do that, and I think most Americans would ask that too. Racism is not the biggest issue to affect the black community in this country. Racism is so much more. There's about 11,000 white supremacists in this country out of a country of 300 million people. The biggest problem affecting the black community, in my opinion, is fatherlessness. I spoke about this a while ago when they were talking about toxic masculinity. It's good fathers cannot be discounted, because a good father will show a young man how to treat a woman, and will how to show a young man how to carry himself in society like a man with responsibility. You do not have to become wealthy to be a good man. You do not have to be famous to be a good man. You just have to be a good man. And being a good man, and I know people are, oh, man, it doesn't discount what good women do either in this world. But being a good father and being a good man, and it will show the young man how to act like a man. And it will show daughters what is acceptable of a man and how a man is supposed to act. And I think we have lost sight of that as a nation, because we glorify individuality. We make martyrs out of people who should never be made martyrs. We push the father out and call him toxic. It's toxic masculinity to just be stoic now and not be emotional about things. Well, I don't agree. I don't subscribe to that. I don't believe it is toxic masculinity. I believe toxic masculinity is a when it's toxic is when you're pushing those values on people and being ultra aggressive and forcing aggressiveness on somebody. That's toxic, you know. But to teach a man to teach a young child to not complain every time he doesn't get his way, that's not toxic. That's teaching him to contemplate and bide his time and to think about things before he does things. It makes for a better society. So yeah, I really feel that fatherlessness is one of the biggest issues. Obviously, poverty is an issue too. Um, but you know how you defeat poverty? You don't commit crime. You go to college. You go to the army. You go to the Marine Corps. You come out. You get a job. That's how you defeat poverty. It's through work and industry. That's the best way. It's not going to come from government handouts. It's not going to come from government programs, things like that. I mean, they can be offshoots, extensions, things like that. You know, maybe it's community college, maybe it's, but education and industry, not even necessarily education, in all honesty. There are plenty of successful people who never went to college. There's probably more successful people who never went to college than there are who went to college. But they do know that having a high school diploma actually increases your income by, I think it was like 10%, and having a college degree increases it. I'm not sure what the number is, but I know they said it actually increases your income by another percentage too. And yeah, that could lead to an education bubble. That's why I'm not always necessarily for it, because you know what? All these wealthy people out there in the world, they need plumbers, they need electricians, they need mechanics, they need carpenters, and there's plenty of work for those people who do those things too, and there's nothing wrong with doing that work. My grandfather was a plumber. He was one of the first people to send a child of color to Swarthmore. Yes, my father's sister was the first person of color to attend Swarthmore. My you know he sent other children, others of his children to medical school and law school, and he was a plumber. Yeah, and people never looked at that. That wow, here's this plumber who has the money to do these things. Plumbers make very, very good money, as do mechanics, electricians, things, and carpenters. They all make good money. And yeah, money is the easiest way out of poverty that I know of. Building an infrastructure in a community that can thrive upon itself is it's not government programs. It's capitalism. That's the way out of poverty. And and once you're out of poverty, guess what? Crime goes down. And it's been statistically shown that communities that don't have poverty have less crime. Yeah. Yeah, I'm hearing talk too of defunding the police. You don't defund the police. That's stupid. Yeah. Police reform, yeah. I hear that. But defund the police? Who's that benefit? You know that hurts. I don't know who it benefits, but I know who it hurts. It hurts those impoverished, poor, crime-riddled communities more. It's like choking them out the rest of the way. Because what happens is, the wealthy community is going to hire private security firms. They're going to hire the ex-police that you defunded. That's what's going to happen. So they're going to have top-flight security. Meanwhile, back in Poverty Town, it's just going to get worse. Those towns are going to be run by the criminals. I don't know. I'm not saying I have the answers. I don't know what the answers are, but I'm saying we need to at least start having a dialogue about what possible answers we could find and what are some of the actual solutions. And we have to be willing to have that conversation as a people. And, listen, if they'd only just let the pipe smokers rule the world, right? I mean, like I said, ultimately we need to look at what makes us similar and stop looking at what makes us different. Section 333 out. Sorry to get all preachy on you, but let me get out of here. You guys have a wonderful day. It's a beautiful one out there. I hope you get out there. All right, bye.